The project that I did was quite ambitious and complicated, but it was great, and it was great doing it with both fields. Essentially, the provocation last year was culture for a changing city. And so I thought about how that resonated with me and then my community, and as a queer person, the LGBT community in East London is a massive thing, and it always has been, and it's been under massive amounts of change, like the rest of London as well. And so this project was looking at the effects of gentrification and new property development on queer communities and LGBT spaces. And so essentially the project was based around field recordings of construction work in East London, and then all of the sounds of the construction work was reinterpreted across different instrumentation. And so the idea behind it was that it would be me, and I was collaborating with 3 other musicians, none of them classically trained and all quite experimental. So one of them ran an LGBT venue but was really interested in experimental music. One of them was a drag queen who started working in noise music and is writing text, and then one of them is an artist who works just with turntables and using prepared turntables, and I was like, that's great. Because we were looking at this concept of nightlife and how nightlife is being affected by gentrification. And so I guess I can't really show the project. Essentially what happened was I wanted it to be something that was very theatrical and accessible in a way that people could have free movement within it. And so we had these 4 different stations. We were in this venue over here, so I was here, one of the performers was over there, one of them was over there, and one of them was over there. And so people would come in and they could move around in between us. It was about a half an hour piece. I had lots of electronics, a violin, cymbals, a prepared piano, which is where a lot of the budget of moving things went into. Someone else, we had these huge sheet metal structures with a lot of electronics. We had turntables. We had all these different things. There was different visual stimuli for people to be able to walk around and see. There was also projections and film. There was lighting design. It was really ambitious, and so it was really lovely to be able to work with Spitalfields and be supported in that process. What was I going to talk about? So engaging local audiences. It was interesting with that project because it was specifically looking at the queer community in East London. But it was definitely something that I thought would resonate with anyone who's lived in this area as well and has seen how it's changing and how it's affecting lots of different queer communities and any kind of marginalised community as well. And then obviously with Rich Mix and Spitalfields, when you're engaging with local communities, for me, it's about, if you're working from a research perspective, which I guess a lot of people would be doing for something like this, talking to people and having open conversations with people. When I was creating this project, one of the really nice parts of it was that with the artist who was working with turntables, I took lots of submissions from people in the queer community here to be like, what song is it that you would associate with a venue, or that you associate with a venue that is closed? And then I went and bought all of those vinyls so that this artist who I was working with could use them. And so there was this kind of conversation that I started having with all these people who are part of the queer community as well, and so they were contributing to it in their own way as well. And then different people from that community came as well. So if you're looking to engage with specific people in the community or specific groups, have conversations with people, go and talk to people, put something online, ask people to retweet something or share something, and then they can talk to them about that. The way that I approached it last year, as a composer or performer, I tend to work a lot with electronics and in theatre, so this piece last year was working from a kind of very theatrical basis, but the way that I approached the project with Open Call was with a lot of planning, I think, when I went into it. And in terms of your applications or the way that you're approaching it, I think having plans in place that are quite specific but allow you to have a lot of experimentation within that kind of laboratory process, I think was one of the things that was most valuable about doing the project last year. So it was like, I know I had 4 days in this space, and then within those 4 days it was, so what are the limitations that we're going to put in place for experimentation or this kind of laboratory process, which I had with my 3 other collaborators who I hadn't worked with before, and we were sort of stretching each other. And so that when I came into the interview, I said, I know that these are the things that are going to be challenging, I know that these are the things that I'm going to need support with, and these are the things that we're going to be working on with the experimentation involved in that. And so because it is this really rare opportunity to have an experimental approach, and you don't have to have a finished product, like Al was saying, and that's a really rare thing, especially with the kind of budget that's involved with this as well. You won't really get, in my experience, you don't really get that kind of funding to do something that doesn't have a specific outcome. to it. And so that's a really, really special opportunity to work with. So yeah, I guess that's one of the things that I found the most valuable about it. I wanted to try and have something that was as fully formed as possible to get good documentation on it, but that would kind of allow for things that didn't work and that I knew that wouldn't work. So then we go back into, we're trying to look to develop it again towards the end of this year. But it allows you to really try out all those ideas and also have the support and to have the tech, or to have the support of the Rich Mix as well as Spitalfields Music, which is an amazing venue. And I said that I wanted that space when I came in, which wasn't the initial plan, but I was like, I know this space. And I know that we have like a nice lighting rig, that kind of thing. And they were really flexible about that. Does anyone have any questions about it as well, or processes, or anything to do with that? Yes?
I was going to ask you about whether your collaborators, did you know them before you started?
I knew them, I knew two of them already, but just sort of through the community. Like one of them who was a drag queen, I knew because I worked with their partner. And then one of them ran a venue that I used to go to quite a lot, which has now changed. And one of them is an academic who worked with someone else. So it's kind of people that I knew would have an interest in this kind of topic, but who I hadn't worked with before. And then I approached before I applied, and then approached again after we applied, and we kind of planned it. And it was complicated, because it's always complicated working with 3 people. But that was a really valuable part of it as well. And one of them especially, we formed a really valuable relationship. We just did a project with the Philharmonia Orchestra together, and it was just this really lovely, lovely thing.
When people are kind of looking through the application and just kind of going, I mean, yeah. How long did it take? Did you already have your idea in your head?
It was an idea that had been floating around in my head for a while. I was like, God, I'd love to do something that's just like... Because I've done things before where it's sort of instrumentation, reinterpreting field recordings or sounds like that. And I was like, it would be great to do that in this way that's quite challenging and quite harsh, because it was literally metal reinterpreting the sound of metal. So that idea was there, but then it was more that provocation and also knowing the space of the Rich Mix and knowing the way the Spitalfields approaches community just kind of really solidified it. And I was like, this is how this can work and this can go from there, which was great. And because it was quite complex in terms of collaborators and technology, having the timeline was the thing that took a little bit longer, because I was like, okay, well, how are we going to do this and how are we going to do this? But that was great. The other thing that I was going to mention as well is that I think with any opportunity like this, you're going to get out of it as much as you put in. So there's mentoring. Like with the Rich Mix, I was like, can I have space, please? And they were like, yeah, of course. You can just ask for things, and people are really good at communicating that. And that's a really valuable thing as well, because you don't get that with a lot of organisations. I found in my experience, and I'm sure that you have all found in your experiences as well. Great.
How much is the, in terms of the application process, maybe this is other people's work, but what's my question? Like, how much is it about the idea versus like you as an artist? Do you see what I mean? Like, is Spitalfields looking? What was your experience of like when you, even in the application process, is it about like I have this idea and this is the thing I want to do, or is it I'm this artist? And I mean, I suppose those things are related, right? But
yeah, I think they're quite interlinked.
Yeah.
But I think I started with like, this is the idea and this is how this relates to what my work is overall, because yeah, I'm a very interdisciplinary artist and work a lot in theatre, and so I was like, this is why it's going to be a theatrical piece, because at the same time I think it isn't, obviously this is about experimentation, but it's also good to be able to be like, this is my background and this is why this has informed it. And so because it was about something that's quite close to my heart as well, I kind of included both of them. So I think the thing as well with this project, as far as I'm aware, is it's for emerging composers, it's for people of every different like stage of their career who want to try something out. Because even if you're a massive established composer, you still don't really get the opportunity to try things out in this way and experiment in this way. So I guess, yeah, it's about your idea and having obviously it's about experimentation, but having as much clarity in what that could be and what you want to try that out to be as well. Like the thing that I always try and do when I'm writing applications is I'll talk to my housemate works in photography, or my friends who work in like tech startups, and I'm like, does this make any form of sense to you? And if it does, and if the idea is clear enough, then I think that's a good sign, because sometimes I feel like, I don't know if you get this when I talk to other composers, and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to try and work from this conceptual basis where this kind of like layer is going to go underneath this thing, and some people will be like, what? That's always what I kind of try and do. Generally my housemate's like, shut up, but it's like, it's a good thing to try.
Yeah, thanks.
Hopefully you won't see that.
Sorry, just one more question about the audience reaction to and the engagement, the kind of different kinds of engagement that happened.
Yeah.
And how you want how you might adapt it in the future. You said you're going to be.
Yeah, it was a really nice thing, because the sort of the free movement of people being able to walk around was something that I was really clear on, I think, from the first meeting, because I was like, one of the problems that I have, or that I find can make classical music or a lot of music environments quite challenging and not accessible, is the fact that you're sat in the seating rig and you can't really say anything or move, or if I cough, someone's going to stare at me for ages. And it was so having that free movement and trying that out was really valuable, because again, if I was trying to, I said, can I have the seating rig out, please, and that kind of thing. And again, Rich Mixon's book was really flexible with that, but it was really nice to see how people responded to that and how much people moved. I was sort of like, are they just going to like sit in the middle and not want to do anything? Are they all going to sit on the sides? And I did learn something, because we had a projection at that point. Everyone was like, what's the film? And I was like, okay, that's something I need to learn. But people had a really lovely response to that as well. I think that kind of free movement element of it, especially because there was so much going on in each of those different corners, people had a really great response to that. And also, I was mentioning, I can't remember who I was talking to, I was mentioning to you actually that, or I can't remember who, but that there was a lot of noise. It was quite a loud piece, and it was kind of because of the sounds that we were reinterpreting it. At times it was a bit aggressive, at times it was a lot more emotive, and I was thinking, okay, is it going to be certain people that are going to resonate with this? People who are more inclined to experimental music that can be a bit challenging are going to appreciate it more or enjoy it more, and it was the complete opposite. Like, so many people who came, and when we were talking about it afterwards, I was really surprised by how many people that topic resonated with, people outside of the LGBT community or other people who have seen those kind of changes. So I think that's the other really valuable thing as well, is that generally, depending on the work that I'm doing, I work a lot in theatre and performance art, and I know those audiences in those spaces, whereas with this, you're getting other people to come to your work as well that you might not normally, and who might not normally engage with your work, and that kind of feedback is the most valuable thing I think that you'd ever really have, because otherwise you're just staying within the same circles, and sometimes that's not helping you develop, if that answers anything. Great.
Brilliant.
Okay.